Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we're going to talk about burnout, when a game master has lost all of their motivation to really be a game master anymore. The excitement in being a GM is left, and it feels more like a work obligation than it does feel like a hobby. It's a chore, something that they dread doing versus something that they enjoy doing. Needless to say, once a game master has hit the burnout point, the game begins to suffer. Sometimes they just stop getting scheduled altogether, or the games, once they do have them, become less fun because the GM isn't putting their all into it anymore. Many groups have just fallen apart due to game master burnout, or they've just never recovered from it, or they just never had that next game scheduled and they just kind of wonder why that game ended. If you run long enough, you're probably going to have burnout at some point, and it sucks. Maybe you keep trying, just kind of muscle your way through it, find your joy again, and you try to get past that, and hopefully, not really have to change anything, and nobody will even know that you were burnt out on it. And sometimes you do, but sometimes just trying to power through a burnout really ends up making it worse, where you're using your memory of when the game was fun to try to motivate you, to try to recapture that, and that really only works so long, but if you're still not having fun, it just ends up kind of just doing a downward spiral on you. So that's what we're going to talk about. Game Master Burnout, overcoming it, as well as some tips or suggestions on hopefully avoiding it altogether. Now first, Game Masters, if you feel like you're getting burnt out, the first thing you should do is determine why. What is causing it? And you have to be honest with yourself here. Is it you? Maybe you don't enjoy the genre or the game anymore. Maybe life has just gotten too hectic or too busy. Maybe it's the players. Are your players a good fit for you, or are they a good fit for each other? Are there any problem players in your group? Is there some sort of break in your group communication, and this has kind of slowly worn you out, and now you've got GM burnout just due to that? Or have the game's just grown stagnant, like you're doing the same thing over and over again, trudging through, hoping for some big payoff that just never seems to come. In my own experience, burnouts were never caused by just a single thing. There were combinations of problems that kind of compounded on each other until they finally hit my breaking point. So once you find the cause for your burnout, keep looking, because there might be more causes behind it. This might require talking to your players. I've always said that gaming is a group effort, and a game master isn't having fun and they're getting burnt out, then that's going to be the whole group's problem. So see what your players think about this. Chances are that they've noticed it too, and they might be able to offer some, different perspectives as to what could be the cause behind this, because they don't want you to be burnt out. If you're playing with reasonable people, they don't want their game master to be unhappy. They honestly don't want a game master who's forcing themselves to be there like it's a chore. People want a game master that wants to be there for them, so your players have a pretty big interest in making sure that you're happy. So telling your players, guys, I'm feeling burnt out, they should accommodate and try to help you fix that. And if for nothing else, they need a happy game master if they want their game to continue going. Remember that the big foundation behind the RPG social contract is that if you want a long-running group, is that everyone at the table should try to help everyone else have fun. So if you're not having fun, then they should try to help accommodate and identify what that is, and hopefully that'll remove the problem. You shouldn't have to go through all of this alone. Find out if the other players around the table are having fun. As a game master, I feed off of my players' excitement. If my players are not excited at the game, then I'm not going to feed off of that, which that's going to diminish my own excitement. So then my game is going to start suffering because I'm not as excited about it, and because the game is suffering, they're not going to be as excited about it, and it ends up becoming a spiral until we finally hit full-on burnout. So find out if they're having fun, and if not, why aren't they having fun? What can we do to fix that? Maybe they're feeling burnt out too. Maybe they're feeling burnt out for the same reasons that you are. Maybe it's your players. One of your players in the group, maybe they're not a good fit with everybody else. I've talked about that before in a previous video. I've had burnout because I and several other players in the group were just tired of dealing with a player that was, wasn't that they were a bad person, it's just that they didn't mesh with what it was we wanted out of the game, and we were getting really tired of trying to deal with that and try to wrangle that and try to accommodate that. Or maybe you have a legitimate problem player that's in your group, and that player's toxic behavior has poisoned the game to the point that you no longer want to run the game anymore, because at this point you're really just dreading the thought of running them again. So the whole thought of being excited about the game, that is done, because they have poisoned that, and now you don't even have motivation to play anymore. So talk to your players, see what they think about this, ask for their help, see what they can do to help help you out with that. And in some cases, you might need to let one or more players go. And in my experience, the biggest cause of burnout is going to be life itself. There's jobs, family, other obligations, and 1,000 other details that start requiring your time. And maybe that cramp in your available free time has started wearing you out. So if so, maybe you should play less frequently. For us, about the time that we graduated college, we had to change our weekly game schedule. We used to do every Friday for, 3, maybe 4 hours if we were lucky. And we ended up having to change that to where we would do it one Saturday a month. And it was an all-day Saturday event. Or sometimes it was a Sunday because nobody had, we didn't have enough people that were available on Saturday, so we moved it to a Sunday. So we really just couldn't stick to a set schedule anymore. We just started trying to schedule it whenever we could fit the most people into a game session. But we had to reduce that down to once a month versus our, once a week, Friday night, we're all gaming. So maybe lower the frequency of your sessions, not have a fixed schedule to them if maybe that's the problem, because not everybody can be committing to, one night a week every single week. And if you are involved in multiple games, let's say that you're running 2 games and maybe you're a player in a 3rd game and you're playing 2 of those every week and another one you're playing every other week, so you got 2 games, 3 games, 2 games, 3 games. Is that sustainable? Can you actually keep doing that once life starts throwing all sorts of random stuff at you and all of a sudden you've got 100 more obligations pulling you a lot of different directions? So you might need to pare that down as far as how many games that you're in and really just focus and enjoy on those fewer games. You get to enjoy them more because now you've got the time to enjoy them more versus trying to spread your attention out between all of these different games. Or maybe you're spending too much time and energy just preparing for the games, crafting every detail and spending all your free time thinking about the game, trying to come up with everything that's going to happen. And finally, because you think about this all day, every day, you just ended up burning yourself out on the game altogether. So consider changing how you run your games. Do you really need that much preparation? I've talked a lot about the importance of having a lot of preparation before a game, but if you're wearing yourself out from preparing for the game because you were always thinking about it and it's to the point that by the time the session happens, you're just too tired to even think about it anymore, then that is a serious problem and that's something that's got to change. Or if you're preparing lots of stuff, contingencies upon contingencies, trying to always be ready for whatever it is they might do and whatever it is it might throw at you, then the majority of that is never going to get used. You're preparing a lot of stuff that you're never going to use. Then you're going to always be disappointed because you prepared all this great stuff and it was never used. And when that starts becoming most of the stuff you prepared and it happens over and over again and it's hours and hours going to waste, that just wears you down after a while and all of a sudden you stop really caring anymore. So learn to gauge what it is that you actually need to prep. Whenever you run a game and you're preparing all this stuff, how much of that is unused? Is there a kind of a similarity between the stuff that doesn't get used? And if that's the case, then you probably don't prepare that because it's probably not going to be used. So don't use up all your mental energy before the game by preparing for the game. That way you don't have enough left that you can do some improvisation to hold it all together because most of it's going to be improvised anyway. So go ahead, don't prepare the stuff that you don't need to prepare. Just save your brain power because in the end, you're still going to have to improvise it. Then for the session itself, are your sessions too long? Even a great game can run its course. And if your players start off strong and you have a really good 2 or 3 hours and everybody's excited, but it starts petering out, trying to finish off that full slog because you're trying to get to 5 hours because you scheduled it to be a 5-hour session and everybody's, looking at their watch and they're kind of getting bored and they're tired, you should probably just be scheduling that you only have 2 or 3 hour games in that case. I have been super guilty of this. This is one of my big Game Master sins that I still do from time to time. But if a group does not have the stamina to keep that excitement going for the entire session, then the game should end while they're still excited. Everybody's looking at it and they're enjoying it versus once it's slowed down and everybody's looking at their clocks and kind of wondering when the hell is this thing going to finally end? Because if their last memory of the game was when they were still excited, when they were still like, oh my God, this is so much fun, then they're going to be excited about getting to the next game. But if their last memory of the game, when they look back on on it to see how it ended, and they remember that they were bored and they were tired and they were frustrated and they're just kind of wanting this thing to be over with, then that's what they're going to remember about the game the most, even if the beginning was exciting. So you want to go ahead and cut that session off once they begin to start waning. You've hit that maximum fun. Go ahead, end that where they're still wanting more versus trying to trudge through this entire time block because that's what you scheduled and you think that you just have to do it like a marathon, even though nobody around the table is enjoying that. It's simply quality over quantity. This has definitely been one of the big lessons that we learned in the past year and a half, and we had to switch to doing online games versus games in person because our stamina when we were playing online just wasn't as long as it was when we were playing in person. So we'd schedule these big long games like we'd have when we're sitting around the table and you were feeding off each other's excitement and we kept it going. We realized that we could really only do an online game for about half as long before we all started petering out and we weren't really having as much fun anymore. Another is that you might be getting bored of doing the same old thing. You know, what might have been enough to excite you when it was still new and fresh has kind of lost its luster and it's not exciting you the way that it used to. So shake your games up, inject something new, some sort of fresh gimmick or some sort of new aspect into the game. Maybe do a session where you hand your players a physical puzzle, or maybe bust out an actual countdown clock. You know, I did this once where the player characters had to escape an area before the counter hit 0. So I pulled out an old alarm clock and I set it up there and I said, when this thing hits midnight, that's when the bad thing is going to happen. Now, I never paused this clock, so if we took a break or we stopped to discuss the plan or we stopped to eat, that clock was still going. It was still working its way toward midnight. And if we had any actions in the game that might take up a little bit more time, such as they were going to search a room or maybe they were going to take a break or something like that, I would advance the clock. I'd add some time to that clock in order to represent that, kind of showing that they used up some of their time. So that clock was always going, and it doesn't always take as much time outside the game as that clock is going to be taking because it's representing the time inside the game. So, 1 minute here, 10 minutes there might get added to the thing. And by the end of the game, all the players are looking at that clock because, once it started, they had a lot of time that's left on. They had a lot of time left on the session. They seemed to be about the same. So they're like, oh, okay, that's just kind of working its way toward the end of the session. But at this point, we've got an hour left that's in the session, but we've only got about 15 minutes that's on the clock. And oh my God, are we going to be able to get through this in time? And it got really tense and really exciting and a lot of fun. Or do a dungeon or cave network using random geomorph tiles, building the dungeon as they draw these cards from a deck and they're kind of laying them out. I have a video on how I did that gag. Maybe I have a session where we use a sock puppet or something as an NPC that the players have to talk to and interact with. As you open up the trunk, a little creature pops its head out. Oh my God.
Hi, how you doing?
What the hell is that thing?
My name is Fritz, and because you set me free, I'm going to give you aid.
I'll ask and see if it knows where the wizard's secret laboratory is. Don't ask me, ask the puppet. Okay, well, Fritz, do you know where the wizard's secret lab is?
Hell yeah, I know the way. I'll show you how to get there. Give me a high five.
Do it. Give him a high five. Yes, it's silly. Yes, it's dumb, but it's also memorable. It's something new and something they get to enjoy because it's something that is way outside the normal thing that they're always doing. If you have massive combats or something like that, maybe have a combat where you use gummy bears to represent the bad guys. You kill a bad guy, you get to eat it. Laugh when the players start attacking opponents based off of what flavor they are versus what that NPC is capable of doing to them. Yeah, edibles. In my GM Toolbox videos where I've talked about doing some of these gags, I've said that I'd never want to do them all the time because they get old pretty quickly, but as a rare or one-time thing, they can be a lot of fun, and those can help kick you out of a rut. Or do a different theme or a plot element to your game. If you do a lot of combat, maybe do a mystery or a heist instead. Now both you and your players are engaging in something new and fresh, challenging yourself because you're trying to run a different type of game than you normally do, and the players are being challenged because they're trying to play a different type of game than they normally play. That keeps everybody engaged, and that's a wonderful motivator because we can have a lot of fun doing something just vastly different than we're used to doing, and that challenge is where we get the excitement from. Or just just change the terrain of your game. If your games are normally in some sort of temperate climate, then send them off to the frozen wastes. Bust out the special rules for hostile environments, and make them have to learn other characters with pilot dog sleds and stuff that's really different than what they're used to playing. And then once they get back from that, you throw them off in the steaming jungle that's got a totally different environmental threats and different things that they have to deal with and adapt to. All these little considerations like that keep it kind of exciting and fresh, because even the land itself, the geography of this place, is now causing all sorts of different things that they have to keep under consideration. Or if you've been following a single campaign for a while and it's got this one plot that they've all been working along, and you're kind of getting tired of it because you're always trying to follow the same plot, then throw in a totally unrelated side quest on them. Some sort of adventure that you can go off, leave the main plot for a bit, do something totally different with these characters, and then once it's done, you come back and you continue along the same plot, but it's now refreshed because you got to have a break from that thing, and now you get to look at it as something that you're excited to get back to. Or if none of those work, if you try them and the problem just seems to be bigger than that, then look into just changing campaigns. Simple truth is, if the campaign that you're playing is not enough to keep you and your players excited about it, then something is going to have to change, because none of you are going to be excited about it. So go ahead and scrap it and do something else. Maybe do it at a different location or with a different culture, maybe a special theme to it, like you're all pirates or you're all dwarves or you're all in a thieves guild inside some huge metropolitan city. Theme games are a huge favorite of mine. I've been meaning to do a video on this topic for some time because I've had a lot of success with them, and I think they're a lot of fun, and it's a topic that really should be explored. So consider having your group all build their characters around some specific theme, some sort of focus that they all get to kind of work their way around, such as a shared background or occupation, like they're all in a traveling circus as performers. Lets you kind of deep dive into certain cultures that you choose for that, or different types of adventures that you normally don't get to have in normal games, and that kind of keeps it exciting and fresh, because in a normal game you don't get to do this. But with this theme game, now you're all going to focus on this, and that can be kind of fun and a new way of trying it. Now, sometimes though, the burnout can't be solved by just fixing your campaign. It wasn't the campaign, really it's the system itself. So consider exploring different game systems that are out there. Maybe some one-shots, or do a side game of something new. Get to play a different type of game. It doesn't work anything like the game that you're playing now. I've talked about doing one-shots before. They're a wonderful palate cleanser and a kind of a low-commitment way to try out and test drive another system while still maintaining your main game that you come back to once it's done. Or in some extreme cases, consider changing your primary game system. Just go ahead and make the full change and start playing something else. Years ago, I hit my total burnout with Dungeons & Dragons. It had been my primary game for 17, almost 18 years of my life, but finally I hit a point where I was just done with it. The game didn't excite me anymore, and while changing our campaigns and gave me a temporary excitement, it really in the end just didn't excite me because we were still playing the same game, and overall I was just done with it. This was my worst burnout that I've ever had. It still is the worst burnout that I ever had. I just didn't enjoy the game anymore. I was going through the motions, trying to recapture the magic that I remember having, that excitement that I used to have, but it just wasn't working. And the games, they were getting worse and worse for everybody because I wasn't excited about the game, and nobody was really having that much fun with it. So finally, it hit a point where I knew that I really only had two options. Either A, I could quit RPGs altogether. They've been a massive part of my life, but maybe it was time to close that chapter and just move on and find a different hobby. Or B, I could change the game system entirely. Now, obviously, I chose option B, and it was amazing. I got excited again as we started playing another game. All the complaints that, my players had when I told them that we were going to be changing games, they kind of complained about that because they didn't want to learn a new system. Those were washed away as they saw how enthusiastic I was and how I approached this, because how much more our games improved because I was enthusiastic about it. Later on, some of those players did confess to me that they hadn't realized how much they were burning out on D&D as well until they had made the switch and started playing something else and were having a bunch of fun, and they suddenly remembered how much fun they had forgotten that they used to have. They thought they were still having all the fun that they used to, but once they started playing something fresh and new and they were having fun, they were like, oh my god, yeah, that's what this is supposed to feel like. And they started realizing that, yeah, Their own enjoyment in that game had diminished, and all of us improved because we changed systems. Finally, and this is for all you forever GMs out there who somehow ended up in the position where you're always running the game no matter what it is that you're playing, the best way of mixing it up is by becoming a player. Now, you don't have to quit your main game or something like that. That's not what I'm telling you to do, but just join a game as a player. And that's one of the biggest things that's really helped me out in the past 2 years is being able to join different games. It's not just a huge relief to show up and, being able to play without having all the stress and all the prep that I had to do as a game master. I just show up and I have some fun and I get to roll some dice. I get to find out what it is we're going to do that day as far as our adventure. And I got to remember what it was like to be a player because after a while I had kind of forgotten what that felt like. So recently I had joined a small game. It was kind of pretty sporadic when we got to play. One of my buddies had put it together. But, I still enjoyed showing up, getting to play a character and really just getting to be a goofball player. But after 2 sessions, my buddy that's running the game, he not so subtly starts hinting that maybe I should take over running that campaign and he can be a player because, I'm the more experienced game master than he is, et cetera, et cetera. All you forever GMs out there, you have to have experienced this too, right? This is something that other people get, not just me. And I had to explain to them, well, all the other players around the table, they were there because they enjoyed playing his game and they were there to have fun and they were having a lot of fun playing in it. I needed this. This was something that I actually really needed in my life, was just to be a player in a campaign versus, the occasional one-shot that I might have. But, in a one-shot, you don't really get overly attached to your character. You don't have any sort of progression with the character. But now with this campaign, I had a character and I was attached to them and I got to watch them grow and I got to remember all the joy of what it was like to be a player because I hadn't had that in so long. I had kind of forgotten what a lot of that was like. So being a player in his game was actually super duper helpful for me. And not just that, it was a game that I wasn't really familiar with at all. So it wasn't like I was, playing in a game where I automatically just knew all the rules and I had that mastery of the rules. No, I showed up and I was really clueless. So at first I was kind of like, how do these dice in this game work? It's just like a total noob and it felt great. I absolutely needed that. So once I was done, that excitement that I had, that joy of being a player, you got that pure thrill of it. That then translated into when I started running my games because I could remember what it was like to have that feeling and I could try to give that feeling to my players again because it's kind of hard to accommodate for your players. As your GM, you're trying to run for your players and, give them a good game. But if you kind of have started forgetting what it's like to be a player, it's really hard to tailor your games for your players. So I was so excited after that, and then I lost any burnout that I had. So, any forever GMs out there, if you have the time, if not having enough time and life getting in the way has kind of been the cause of your burnout, but if you do have the time to do it, I highly encourage that you either join a game that's out there, just some fun little campaign, or maybe you should encourage that one player that's in your group that's always telling you about that game that they're going to run. We've all got this guy. Maybe they've been telling you about this campaign for like 3 years now, and they haven't even bothered doing the first session for it. Go ahead and tell that player, hey, you know what? You need to schedule that campaign that you've been talking my ear off about for a few years now because I, for one, need to play in that game. Not just because you want to play in their game, but because you, as their normal game master, need to play in their game in order to get that refresh and that change of perspective and all of that inspiration that once you go back behind the screen and you're going to run that player through your normal campaign, you can run that game even better. So now they need to run you in that campaign because that is now an investment in their own enjoyment in your current game. Hopefully that's an argument that you can use to kind of maybe get out of any sort of being a forever game master and, more importantly, help you not get burnt out. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, amigos, stay awesome. So now that you heard that spiel, are you finally going to run me through that game that you've been teasing me with all these years? Yeah, sure. Eventually, maybe. Probably not. You can't blame me for trying.